Smartphones are getting better and cheaper. Hi there, I'm David, your favorite Digitality, and in this video, we'll be going through the best value for money phones in 2020 that cost around $250, which is about 100,000 naira, and we're starting right now with the Huawei P30 Lite. Okay, so Huawei did something quite interesting here. The P series is known for photography, and they brought a light version of the P30, which is under 100,000 naira, which would give users an experience or like a taste of what they could get if they went for the P30 or the P30 Pro. The design looks really good in my opinion. It has a glass back with a plastic frame, which is a bit skeptical, but then it's a nice but it's still a nice design and is relatively light, weighing about 159 grams. You get a 6.15 inches LTPS IPS LCD display, which does look good in my opinion, and it has a resolution of 1080p by 2312 pixels with a pixel density of 415 ppi. For the cameras, you get a 48 megapixel main wide-angle camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. You don't get a telephoto or macro camera, but then the camera performance would still be stellar at this price point. On the front, you get a single 32 megapixel front-facing selfie camera, which would do well in portrait mode. It runs on Android 9 out of the box, but then you can upgrade to Android 10, and it promises an average performance. Not really good, not bad, not downright miserable, but an average performance with the Kirin 710 SoC. You get a 3340 mAh battery, which is kind of small, but then with Huawei's aggressive battery saving OS, you should get through a day with moderate use. There are different storage sizes from 64GB to 256GB, all using eMMC 5.1 storage technology, with RAM sizes from 4GB to 6 to 8GB. It costs around $200, which is about 75,000 naira, and that depends on your configuration. The next one on the list is the Google Pixel 3a. The Google Pixel 3a is an amazing choice for a smartphone at this price point. It has a plastic back and frame, but it still looks polished and feels great. It's also very easy on your hands, weighing about 147 grams. On the front, you have a 5.6 inches OLED display with a resolution of 1080p by 2220 pixels, which looks nice with a pixel density of 441 ppi. And of course, you know Pixel phones are like really amazing. They give really amazing top-notch performance when it comes to photography. You still get the same 12.2 megapixel main camera, but we both know that doesn't really matter, that the software does most of the work. And then you have an 8 megapixel front-facing selfie camera. It runs Android 9 out of the box, but then it's upgradable to Android 11 because it runs on Android 1, which is the cleanest version of Android software out there, and that is another bonus. The Google Pixel 3a does have above average performance with the Snapdragon 670 SoC. It has a 3000 mAh battery. It is small, but then it will be enough to get it through most of the day. You might need to carry a charger along, and the charger supports 18 watts fast charging, so topping up your battery would not be a problem. You only get one storage option with this device, and that is 64GB with 4GB of RAM, and that costs around $240, which is 91,000 naira. The next one on the list is the Samsung Galaxy A30s. It is a decent phone. The design is a bit mediocre, having a plastic back and a plastic frame, but then it's polished to look like glass, but then when you hold it, you would know immediately that it's plastic, and it's also light to hold, but it's weighing around 169 grams. And of course, as a Samsung phone, you get a 6.4 inches Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 720 by 1560 pixels with a pixel density of 268 ppi. In my opinion, the display would look good, but then not sharp enough. It is a 720p display, but then it's Super AMOLED, so dark mode will look really nice on it. As for the cameras, you get a triple camera setup, a 25 megapixel main wide-angle camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide-angle camera, and then a 5 megapixel depth sensor. And on the front, you get a 16 megapixel front-facing selfie camera. It runs Android 9 out of the box, but then it's upgradable to Android 10 with One UI as the custom ROM, with One UI 2.0 as the custom ROM. Like the design of the A30s, the performance of the A30s is also quite mediocre. It's equipped with the Exynos 7904, which does get the job done, but then it's not exactly amazing and it can't be pushed too far. But so far, this phone has the biggest battery, working a 4000 mAh battery with 15 watts fast charging, and it's enough to get you through the day on a single full charge. There are 3 storage variants: 32GB with 3GB of RAM, 64GB with 4GB of RAM, and then the max is 128 gigabytes of storage with 4 gigabytes of RAM. It costs around $230, which is 7,000 naira. Okay, before we go on, there are a few phones that I have to mention. They aren't exactly great overall, but then they do something so well for the price, they have to be mentioned. And our battery champ, the biggest battery phone, is the Samsung Galaxy M31. There are a few big battery phones around, but then they just have a big bulky design that are almost impossible to use comfortably. But Samsung took advantage of that, providing the biggest battery phone to date that they could bring in a small compact design. The Samsung Galaxy M31 comes with a massive 6,000 mAh battery, which should be enough to last you maybe 2 days, maybe even more. And it comes with a 15 watts fast charger, and that is really great. The visual design does suffer a bit. It has a plastic back and frame and weighs about 191 grams. But then with a big battery, the plastic back is just like, it just comes with it, and it weighs about 191 grams. The plastic back doesn't really bother me because it's not exactly polished to look like glass. And on the front of the device, you get a 6.4 inches Super AMOLED screen with a resolution of 1080 by 2340 pixels with a pixel density of 403 ppi. The camera is quite impressive. Here, there is a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel main wide-angle camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide-angle camera, a 5 megapixel macro camera, and finally a 5 megapixel depth sensor. And on the front, you get a 32 megapixel selfie front-facing camera. It runs on Android 10 out of the box. It's still unclear if you can upgrade it to Android 11, but then out of the box, it runs Android 10 with One UI 2.5. It uses an octa-core CPU, the Exynos 9611 chip, and it does perform quite well, better than average apparently. There are different storage variants, 64GB with 6GB of RAM, and then a 128GB storage variant with 6GB of RAM, and then finally a 128GB storage variant with 8GB of RAM, and all of them are using UFS 2.1 storage technology, and it costs around $250, which is 95,000 naira, depending on your configuration. And now the next phone is by no means the best camera phone out there, or even in this list, but it's still a honorable mention. The TCL10 Lite has a nice camera setup coming with a 48 megapixel main wide-angle camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide-angle camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. It's also capable of recording 4K video at 30 frames per second, and it has a 16 megapixel front-facing camera. On the front, you get a 6.53 inches IPS LCD display capable of HDR with a resolution of 1080 by 2340 pixels and a pixel density of 395 ppi. It runs on Android 10, which is upgradable to Android 11 UI skin. It is also equipped with the Snapdragon 665 chip, which runs well with good performance, and then it has a 4000 mAh battery with normal 10 watts charging, and that is the only caveat here. There are two storage variants, 64GB of eMMC 5.1 storage technology with 6GB of RAM, or the 128GB storage variant with UFS 2.1 storage technology with 6GB of RAM, and it costs around $250 also, which is around 95,000 naira depending on your configuration. And now back to our list. The Moto G7 Power comes in second because it is a great value phone for your money. It costs around $110, which is 41,000 naira. You shouldn't expect much. It has a plastic back and frame with water repellent coating, but then on the front it's a 6.2 inches LTPS IPS LCD touchscreen with a resolution of 720 by 1570 pixels with a pixel density of 279 ppi. If you want me to explain what the different screen specs means, let me know down in the comments below. It has a single main camera, a 12 megapixel wide-angle camera which can record 4K video at 30 frames per second, which is very impressive at this price point, and runs on Android 9 out of the box, but is also upgradable to Android 10. It uses the Snapdragon 632 SoC, which performs very well, and it comes with an amazing 5000 mAh battery, which also supports 18 watts fast charging. There are three storage variants. There is a 32GB storage variant with 3GB of RAM, a 64 storage variant with 3 and 4 GB of RAM. And now for the final phone on this list, and also it's my favorite and my daily driver, the Redmi Note 8 Pro. It is a really amazing phone. I have a more detailed review and to be up in the cards, but if you just want to know the surface details, let me lay them down on you. Okay, it has a really nice design. It has a glass back and an aluminum frame, and it weighs about 200 grams, which is quite heavy, but then when you start using it, you will get used to it. On the front of the phone, you get a 6.53 inches LCD display, which is HDR capable, with a resolution of 1080p by 2340 pixels and has a pixel density of 395 ppi. For the cameras, you get a 64 megapixel main wide angle camera with an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, then a 2 megapixel macro camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. And it's also capable of recording 4K video at 30 frames per second. On the front, it has a 20 megapixel front-facing selfie camera. It runs Android 9 out of the box, but then it's upgradable to Android 10 with MIUI 12 as a custom skin. It does perform well. It uses the gaming-centered MediaTek Helio G90D chipset, and it will give you a pleasant experience. It is equipped with a 4500 mAh battery, which is more than enough to last you a day, and it might last you a day and a half if you play your cards right. There are 4 storage variants. There is a 64GB storage variant with 6GB of RAM, 128GB storage variant with 6GB of RAM, 128GB with 8GB of RAM, and then the massive 256GB storage variant with 8GB of RAM. And it costs around $230, which is 87,000 naira, depending on your configuration. And that's all on the list, from the Huawei P30 Lite to the Google Pixel 3a to the Samsung Galaxy A30s, the Moto G7 Power, and then the Redmi Note 8 Pro. Also, don't forget our honorable mentions. Our battery champ was the Samsung Galaxy M31. I'm hoping we would see an M41 or maybe something else. And then the camera king is the CATL10 Lite. Let me know what you think about these phones down in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, like and share this video with your friends. And that is everything I have for you now. I will see you in my next video. Peace.